I'm really excited to introduce Sarah from Trayak, who's going to be talking about life cycle assessments. And then we'll be talking to 3 companies who have gone through this process and can provide some advice about what benefits they've received out of the process. Also, if you'd like to check out some of the results of the life cycle assessments, I strongly encourage you to stop by the Pet Sustainability booth at the exhibit hall, and you can there link to our tools and resources where we have several LCA case studies, and you can learn from how other companies are going through this process. So here to teach us about LCA is Sarah from Trayak.
Welcome to the session, Understanding the Paw Print of Your Packaging. I'm glad you joined me today. My name is Sarah, and I'm a sustainability consultant at Trayak. First, I want to take a moment to thank the Pet Sustainability Coalition for hosting this event. I'm excited to be attending and honored to be presenting. I have an educational background in sustainability, and I'm also an avid dog lover. I've trained 11 service dogs, 1 guide dog, and now I have my own pet dog, Moose, who you'll see throughout this presentation. Today, I'll be sharing how life cycle assessment can help your team better understand the paw print of your packaging. I'll start with an introduction to Trayak, followed by a background of life cycle assessment and why it might be a good solution for your company. Next, I'll give insight into a few sustainable packaging strategies that use life cycle assessment feedback. Then once we have some knowledge of life cycle assessment, I want to talk briefly about what it looks like to go beyond life cycle assessment. Then finally, today I'll end the session with some key takeaways. So let's dive in. Trayak is a software solutions company best known for our life cycle assessment tool, Compass. Our vision is to mainstream sustainability. By this, I mean our goal is to integrate sustainability into a company's day-to-day processes, not just a one-off project. You'll see this concept reflected in each of our products. The vision to mainstream sustainability requires a holistic approach to sustainable thinking. At Trayak, we utilize a process with 5 specific steps which help Compass users implement sustainability and best practices within their existing business processes. A tool that helps Trayak accomplish this holistic approach is lifecycle assessment. It offers a way to continuously monitor and improve the environmental impact throughout the life cycle of a package or product. So what is lifecycle assessment? Well, there are various ways to look at lifecycle assessment, or LCA for short. For Compass, we use the cradle-to-grave approach, which means we look at the environmental impact of a package or product from the sourcing of the material all the way through the end of life or disposal. The material phase consists of the raw material impacts of sourcing, refining, and processing to create a feedstock for packaging or products. The manufacturing phase consists of the converting of the feedstock into the package or product component. Distribution or transportation can be considered at any point throughout the life cycle or supply chain. And finally, the disposal phase considers the environmental impacts of recycling, landfilling, and incinerating the package or product at its end of life. Now let's look at LCA data flow. We start with life cycle inventory, LCI, which means chemical, water, electricity inputs, and various infrastructure that are used to make your package. These are given a characterization factor, which is pulled into the life cycle impact assessment, or LCIA. The LCIA is made up of the 8 indicators that you see on your screen. Each of these LCI inputs has varying characterization factor for each of the indicators to calculate the various environmental impacts. Then all these indicators make up the life cycle assessment. I want to briefly discuss full life cycle assessment versus screening LCA. A full LCA is the big report, which requires high effort in data collection. It uses your plant, your processes, your specific supply chain. This means someone on your team would need to collect the energy consumption, water consumption, chemical inputs, etc., specific to your package. As you can imagine, this comes with a high price tag and a lengthy timeline. A full LCA is required when average industry data does not meet your process or when it's not available due to a new proprietary material or process. On the other hand, we have screening LCA, which uses industry average data for the entire supply chain. It comes with a low effort and cost, as well as a shorter timeline. As a result, you can run what-if scenarios rather quickly and analyze the directional change between your packaging. I do want to note that a screening LCA can incorporate proprietary data where necessary and appropriate. So you do have the ability to pull data specific to your supply chain while maintaining the benefits of a screening LCA. I mentioned earlier that Trayak is most well known for our screening LCA tool, Unpacked Compass. Compass is a streamlined, cloud-based solution that is offered for both package and product. It has a user-friendly interface designed for both technical and non-technical users, with the ability to run simple analyses on design alternatives to complex circularity models or benchmarking entire portfolios. Compass provides pre-populated, region-specific end-of-life data, taking the guesswork out of that phase of a package's lifecycle. When running an analysis, whether simple or complex, users can select from 8 environmental indicators to measure the sustainability of your package or product. So why go the route of a lifecycle assessment? LCA can be used to accomplish many pain points within businesses. It provides quantitative data to help consumers understand the environmental impact of your packaging and the steps your brand is taking to address concerns of packaging sustainability. It also helps in some cases for compliance and reporting. LCA can help save time too and precious resources by calculating the environmental impact of a packaging change early in the design phase before it's even prototyped. Overall, it provides a science-based approach to sustainability and can help differentiate brands. LCA can be used in many ways to help understand the environmental paw print of your packaging. As a brand investigating LCA for packaging, it can help identify hotspots for improvement, compare packaging design alternatives, evaluate environmental trade-offs, and inform decisions based on environmental performance. It can also be used to help shape overall corporate sustainability priorities and to report progress towards these goals and track progress. Let's dive into an example of examining sustainable packaging strategies using LCA feedback. We've made this fictitious company, Pet Food Inc., that has identified some sustainability targets which are shown on your screen, such as reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 20%. We'll be working towards these targets as we evaluate different packaging options within the Compass tool. Pet Food Inc. is focusing on their best-selling product to achieve the largest benefit in reducing their packaging footprint. To run a simple analysis within Compass, we need some basic information that's usually readily available when working with a package design team. We need the material, mass of each material, any conversion or manufacturing processes, and the packaging type for each component of the package. In this particular example, the primary package consists of 2 components, a multi-layer pouch and a zipper. This would be modeled as a composite component with a respective mass and process for each layer of the pouch. When we modeled Pet Food Inc.'s current packaging in Compass and ran a single analysis, we identified hotspots or areas for improvement. In particular, we saw the material impact of the pouch contributed the most to several of the LCA indicators, including GHG emissions and water use. Thus, we're going to look at a focus on a material change of our pouch. This would be our first strategy. Our second would be to consider a bulk package. Our material change would be to a paper-based pouch, while our bulk package will be the same materials as the original or current package, only in a larger format. When we compare all three packaging options at our annual sales volume of 1 million, we see the bulk packaging is a clear winner. While it produces a little more fossil fuel use than the paper-based pouch, it produces the least impact across the three other indicators. Keep in mind that this comparison was done solely on the primary package. Realistically, we encourage users to evaluate the entire packaging system. Often, something like a formatting change can impact your palletization. In addition, to keep things simple, we did not include transportation in this model, which is another factor you may want to consider when performing an LCA. The reason the bulk package shows a reduction in environmental impact when compared to the baseline smaller pouch is because the bulk package can hold 3 times the amount of dog food. So effectively, we need to compare 3 smaller packages to one of the bulk pouch. This leads to overall use of less packaging per the same weight of product, and therefore reduces material use and overall environmental impact. The paper-based pouch was modeled as a slightly heavier pouch to be able to perform the same as the plastic pouch, which contributes to more material use and more environmental impact. Simple indicators take the complexity out of communicating your results. They put your savings into a language a non-technical audience can understand. For example, Pet Food Inc., by switching to their bulk packaging format, sees a decrease in GHG emissions by about 107 ton of CO2 equivalent, which is equivalent to taking 23 cars off the road for an entire year. Now that we have a basic understanding of LCA, and we walked through an example, I want to share how companies like yours can go beyond LCA with our add-on module SCORE. SCORE is a module we developed here at Trayak because we know packaging decisions are not made in an environmental vacuum. SCORE gives your product and package development processes direction at the operational level to facilitate your sustainability strategy. It allows you to consider packaging attributes such as damage rate, shelf life, cost, circularity, etc. in the evaluation. With SCORE, you can visualize trade-offs between environmental impacts such as GHG emissions and packaging attributes like those I just mentioned. Your company would select from a library of metrics and weight them based on company priorities. The result is similar to the spider chart on your screen, where trade-offs become clearer and optimization easier, leading to better decisions. Before we conclude today's session, let's review some key takeaways. Comprehensive management of packaging sustainability. To avoid burden shifting, don't focus on one indicator and consider evaluating your entire packaging system, including distribution and supply chain transportation. Identify areas of maximum sustainability gains. For example, consider targeting your best-selling package. Next, evaluate multiple strategies. There are usually multiple ways to achieve a sustainability goal. Perhaps your goal is decreasing fossil fuel use. One way you could do this is by using a biomaterial. Another might be switching to a completely different packaging format, which leads to our next takeaway. Make decisions about trade-offs. There's no golden material choice. In some circumstances, plastic might be the best choice. In others, maybe it's aluminum. Every packaging design will have environmental trade-offs to consider. Make decisions about these trade-offs that align with your company goals. Communicate results effectively. Try not to use technical language or big terms when describing your results to non-technical audiences. Our simple indicators can come in really handy here. In addition, avoid using confusing terminology and greenwashing. And finally, track and report against goals. Now, more than ever, consumers are rewarding brands that share and take responsibility for the environmental impact of their packages and products. That being said, there's no better time than the present to take a step towards understanding the paw print of your packaging by using life cycle assessment.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that comprehensive look at a pretty complicated topic, life cycle analysis. I am really excited to be joined today by an array of colleagues across an array of time zones. Special shout outs to Adam on that. So joining me today, we have Allison from Trayak, Adam from Tyler Packaging, Jonathan from WellPet, and Mike from Earth Animal, who have all either facilitated or gone through this LCA process, both from a brand and a supplier perspective. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us this afternoon/evening. I'd like, first of all, for you all, starting with Jonathan, Michael, and Adam, to just give us a brief explanation about why did your company decide to do an LCA? How did you find the process? And how have you been using the results since the end of the project? Adam, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, no problem. Hi. The reason Tyler conducted an LCA was really to help educate our customers and consumers. It was really an educational piece in order for us to support them and give them some accurate data to consider rather than just making consumptions. It's really, like you said earlier, that greenwashing is really common. Packaging represents between 2 and 20% of the life cycle of an entire product. And considering the entire life cycle of the product was really important to us. We wanted to do an LCA on 5 common types of packaging within pet food. We found the process really enlightening, and I think it's a real value to our business.
Take it from there. Sorry.
I think you said Mike, but there was a little bit of a cutout, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk, and I think Jonathan can wait just a second. But a couple of years ago, Earth Animal was getting ready to launch a new line of dog food, and at the same time, we were starting to evaluate our whole supply chain from a sustainability perspective, and quickly realized that packaging is a huge part of that sustainability goal from a corporate perspective. And we really needed to learn a lot more about packaging in general. I'm certainly not an expert in packaging. I've learned a whole lot over the last 2 years. But when we started looking at the different materials and the different options, I would say a lot of the different packaging materials we started looking at had similar marketing claims, a lot of greenwashing. So we really didn't know which one was the best option to use. So we reached out to PSC, got connected with Trayak, who's obviously very smart and knowledgeable about all of these things, and ran a really cool LCA to take a look at the full picture. So not just the material inputs, which we thought were most important at the beginning, and looking at the production, the transportation, and then the end of the life. So what happens to that dog food bag after the dog eats all the food and it's just sitting there in the corner? So really getting an apples to apples comparison on the entire process was really, really neat to see. I'd say we picked a certain type of material for that specific product that is ultimately going to change, 2 years later. Thankfully, we didn't get the opportunity to launch the product yet, so we haven't wasted too much material or anything like that. But it's been a really, really cool process, and so much so that we're going to continue this LCA with other types of inputs as well. So not just packaging, we're going to take it to the next level and get it in on our products themselves.
Great. Thank you for that, Michael. Jonathan, how was your experience with LCA? You're the most recent of our panel today.
I'm glad that we did an LCA. I'm glad that we have this tool right now at our disposal that's going to inform what we're going to do in the future. And I'm glad that we have something that is validating what we've been feeling in our gut. We knew that we had a less than desirable baseline in our hearts, and now we can read it. And now we can share that on an objective level within our company, but then also figure out where we want to go in the future. We know the steps, and now we have a better sense of should we migrate to more and more sustainable packages that we would see discussed during forums like this, we know what those values are going to be. So we're just excited to have the tool, to have the information, and to see where it takes us.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. For those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting Allison, Allison is our rock star LCA consultant at Trayak who performs most of this analysis for you. Allison, I'd love to get your opinion on something. At PSC, we've really seen a growth of demand for these kinds of projects over the last 2 years. Is that something that you're seeing just in our industry, or are you seeing kind of the conversation around sustainable packaging going really across the board?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to simply put it, we've seen growth across the board in every single industry. When I started about 3 years ago in this space, we had interest in sustainable packaging, but even last year and this year, it's grown exponentially. Every brand, if they're not talking about sustainable packaging, they're going to need to soon.
Hi, Allison. We seem to have lost your video for just a minute, so we're going to come back to you in just a minute.
Bring it back to our panelists today and actually have Trayak answer of all the different areas in the supply chain from cradle to grave. What do you see the largest impact being in those different life cycles?
Yeah, this is Allison. It's a great question, and we always get a lot of interest in this. The biggest impact for packaging is typically going to be your material. So that includes your raw material extraction. If you're making something out of plastic, it includes the oil, refining, the extraction, and you can imagine that that's a lot of impacts, not necessarily of your control, but it's just part of the process to make a plastic. So we see that most of the packaging LCAs that we conduct, the material impact is where we recommend companies to focus on to reduce their impact. So that could be reducing the material use by lightweighting and right-sizing a package, or it could be completely changing the format and going with a different material altogether.
So interesting, and thank you for clarifying that. I think, we generally find, particularly in the United States, that there is an obsession with recycling, or what happens to this package once it's reached its end of life in use. And, it's much more accurate to think, hey, we might be better prioritized to really focus as package designers, not just on end of life, but also what's the material that we're using. So I really appreciate that perspective and helping to educate our attendees. So since we have all the panelists back, I thought we would just quick round robin. Please don't take a ton of time to explain the dynamics, but could you each go through the different scenarios that you tested as part of your life cycle analysis?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. So we did 3 different types of materials: a bio-based material that included some sugarcane. We had the traditional fossil fuel based, and then we had the recycle ready as well. So 3 components to our LCA.
Our LCA was a little more conventional. As I said, we started from a less than ideal position, which is where we are today, with a 3-ply structure, traditional, with metallized PET. We tested that against a 2-ply structure, removing the metallized. We also tested it against the recycle-ready 2-ply and the aspirational, but yet very soon coming 2-ply recycle-ready with PCR. So 4 different formats, lots of information.
And we tested 5 common formats within the pet food industry, being conventional PET MET PE, paper, polywoven, compostable, and 100% recyclable PE.
All right, super helpful to understand what you all focused on. But I recognize that those are 3 plastic projects. So I'm wondering, Allison, can you shed some light on, is plastic the only thing that your Compass tool is able to assess?
No, we have been a lot of different material classes. You can assess any form of material. We like to say that any packaging material that you see that has a reliable stream that isn't necessarily in like the research development phase, we have data that we can assess in a life cycle assessment for you. So no, it's not all plastics-based, but that certainly is a lot of the conversation today about plastics in the oceans and marine litter. So we have seen an increase in plastics discussions, but we do have the ability to calculate any material.
Great, I appreciate that perspective. So it looks like some additional questions are coming in from the audience. So wondering kind of surprises. What did each of you learn that was kind of unexpected, or did the results turn out as you thought, or were you challenged to kind of think in different ways?
I'll start by saying that there was kind of a lack of a surprise, and I know that Melissa would agree that ours went in a very clear direction. We had the scientific method. We tested a basic hypothesis, and it turns out we have some work to do. That was a bit of a wake-up call, a bit eye-opening, but we're glad to have the information, and we're going to continue to use it.
Yeah, I think for us, it was the real surprise was just there was no silver bullet. This is the best option by far. I think, and maybe this was just part of my limited knowledge at the time. Going into this, I thought, one of these materials would be just far and away better than the others in every category. And it'd be like, okay, well, that's, Recycle Ready is the best in material components. It's the best in production. It's the best in end of the life. So we're just going to go with that, and we're going to be able to shout it to the rooftops, and everyone's going to be super happy. But there really wasn't that. So that was kind of a surprise, and it just makes you take a step back and realize we still have a lot of room to grow in this industry. And there's a lot of cool things happening very quickly. So just keep your eye open and see what's coming down the road.
All right.
Sorry.
All right, so here we are back at some of the surprises, the trade-offs. I absolutely agree. I think a lot of people expect the results to say, here's your clear winner, and I think it really encourages companies to think about which environmental indicators are most important to them. For some, they have carbon goals, right? And so we can make really clear ideas if our number one goal is carbon reduction. At other times, water impact varies between different packaging types. So, kind of going back to the long-term, paper versus plastic debate. Allison, would love to hear from you just about some of the trade-offs on those two common material types used in our industry.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to say that paper is better than plastic in all scenarios, or plastic is better than paper. The LCA is really nice so that you can evaluate for your own packaging structures which is better and which performs. Of course, we need to consider those have different boundary conditions. But essentially, to boil it down in summary, when we look at plastics, they're fossil-based, so they pretty much usually have more fossil fuel use, of course, than a paper-based, which has less fossil fuel use. GHG, sometimes the paper looks better, sometimes the plastic looks better. It depends on if you can have less paper to equal your plastic. Sometimes you need to have more paper material so it's sturdier to equal your plastic format. But to boil it down, the fossil fuel use is typically the most for plastic, and the water use is the less for plastic. So paper typically has more water-intensive processes with the pulping and the processing to make it into the packaging. So in general, those are the main conclusions that we've made. But again, you can't really make a blanket statement about materials, especially when you need to evaluate them for your own packaging structures.
Sure. So that sounds like some trade-offs between water and carbon. Thanks for shedding some light on that. I think it's amazing. We've had this debate over paper versus plastic for forever, and just realizing how difficult these questions can be to answer. So I appreciate your perspective on that. So I'm curious to hear from the panelists. One of the things we've talked about a couple of different times today is the opportunity for bulk and upsizing our bag size in order to increase the amount of pet food in each bag and therefore decreasing the total packaging footprint, which is an all-around win, right? The less packaging you use, the less impact you have. So I'm curious to hear from you, what's consumer demand out there like for larger pet food bags or potentially bulk as well?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that one. So I think it's a delicate balance between cost, freshness, weight. Obviously, if you got a 100-pound bag, there's not a lot of people that could pick that up and throw it over their shoulder, carry it out to their car. But with the new avenues like Chewy and Amazon, taking more revenue share in the market, those might be less concerns. Of course, the delivery driver still has to, place it at your door. But something like ours, where we have it's quite expensive. If we offered it in a, even 30, 40-pound size, there's not a lot of people that would probably be running to the store to purchase a couple $100 bag of food. So you really have to balance all of the different variables, and it depends on your type of food and your type of product that you're putting it in.
I would agree with Michael on this. The demand is definitely coming up. Price, for premium products such as his and mine, I think you definitely have that trade-off and that consideration with your consumer, with your customer. But we are seeing folks that are interested, like you said, with Chewy, that are, as an example, bringing bigger bags to their front doors. And it's more efficient for us from the manufacturing perspective, certainly, all the way right to the consumer's doorstep. So I do think we're going to see that category grow, and I do think that we're tasked with making an appropriate bag, an appropriate packaging solution overall that's going to fit that need.
I completely agree with Jonathan and Michael. The e-commerce is growing, so it gives much more opportunity for brands to deliver direct to door in larger pack formats. But we're still seeing the biggest growth in the market is in small pack formats, exponential compared to big formats.
All right, so I've got one final question here. This one specifically is for you, Adam. I am wondering, how the results of your study have really influenced what you're coming to market with. So how are you starting to shift what you're focusing on in terms of, with all of your customers and encouraging them to move in a more sustainable direction? Can you talk a little bit about how the results have really influenced your company?
So we measured, as I said earlier, 5 different packaging formats across different structures. And the whole purpose was to see which is the most environmentally friendly. And we saw some big shocks. I mean, I tried to say earlier, but I think I had technical issues, that a big surprise for us was our compostable structure had a bigger environmental impact than we expected. The GHG emissions were higher than our recyclable structure, and actually they were very close to the baseline of our conventional PET PE. It was 7 or 8 years ago we originally developed our compostable structure, and because we thought at the time that's where the market would go. For the last 2 or 3 years, we focused very much on PE, recyclable ready structures, and now adding bio-based structures in and recycled content. And we're going to continue down that route because we think that's the way forward. And interestingly, the results for us in the LCA were that the recyclable structure was the clear winner against the 5 different formats on all indices measured, environmental indices measured.
So interesting kind of hearing you talk about Recycle Ready being the clear winner, Michael talking from Earth Animal about how there were clear trade-offs for them. And I think this just goes to show how rapidly these technologies are changing. Earth Animal completed their study 2 years ago, Tyler Packaging just months ago. And technology is advancing so quickly that we're seeing some improvements on the Recycle Ready resin as it's coming more and more to market, some light weighting of that to help it be an environmental incremental win on all fronts. So a couple of key takeaways. It's not always clear which direction to go with packaging. I think this is a way to really look at where you are today, where you want to get to, what are the steps you can take along the way in order to make improvements. Two of the three companies here have released case studies in their partnership with the Pet Sustainability Coalition that are available for free download on our toolkit. So I'd really recommend you take a look at those just to learn more about the life cycle analysis that we offer to our member companies here. Big appreciation to Trayak and Compass. They've been our partner for many, many years. I can remember in the beginning, the database didn't have recycle-ready resin, and we've seen just great transformation, and so much of that data is now available, which makes people have way more data at their fingertips, be able to make these changes to their packaging, and again to demonstrate those improvements in a way that has data behind it. So thanks to all of our participants today, and I'm going to hand it back to Melissa.